you don't have to bill every single minute to the client. You can have some flexibility there and maintain a good relationship with the client. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Lifetime Legacy Lawyer Podcast. I am your co-host, Thomas Vick, joined by our co-host, Seth Wilson. Seth, how's it going today?
Thomas, I'm doing great. It's good to have you back on the other side of the screen, and really curious to hear about your most recent vacation and kind of follow up on that. But it's wonderful to be back on the mic with you. Always enjoy our time kind of chatting and catching up about how practice is going and what are the opportunities and challenges that we're facing with our growing firm. So tell us a little bit about your trip and how that went.
Well, it was a great trip. We went to Disney World for about a week and a half. We're down there in Orlando area. Saw some relatives along the way. Did a ton of time in the theme parks. Also went to Universal Studios. Had a great time. The one funny thing that happened was I was walking behind my car after getting gas, and I didn't realize that my wife and daughter were trying to get my attention because they saw something, a creature on the other side of the car. But behind the car, I was met with a monster of a sandhill crane that was like 4.5 foot tall. And I like stepped toward it thinking like, it's a duck, it's just going to walk away. No, it stepped towards me. This thing was massive. And I had to go back to the front of the car. I was intimidated. I couldn't face it any longer. Had to get in the car and run away. So that was kind of a funny thing that happened. But it was good. We got back a few days ago, last Wednesday. I was back in the office on Thursday and Friday and kind of caught up on everything. We had our usual game plan meeting, a weekly game plan meeting team on that Thursday. Kind of went through everything that happened, and then Friday, kind of a regular work day for me. I usually don't work Fridays, but I just came in and caught up on stuff. And from an energy level, I was exhausted on Saturday, but come Monday of this week, I've really been able to get back into the groove and get into the routine again. I would say on kind of how I've dealt with it, it was really important to figure out what the prospective clients were that had come in. Traditionally, I'm the one that meets first with the client and typically retains the client. And this past couple of weeks, I had our associate attorney meet with folks, and the way that it kind of worked out was he met with them, and then I needed to follow up in some way with the client. So we made a list of all of the prospective new clients that came in during the time that I was out, and that gave me an idea of what I needed to do for each client to make sure that revenue doesn't suffer just because I was out of the office for a substantial amount of time.
Yeah, and that actually is a really good point that we didn't really talk about as part of the preparation for the trip was kind of the process, if you will, of intake and onboarding, especially if someone's not as familiar with that role or if additional information was going to be needed in order to provide an estimate on the fee or something along those lines that may be not within the discretion of the folks who are covering the meetings. And so kind of a good after action review item to look at and say, hey, we can adjust a couple things the next time I'm on a trip. We can handle this piece of the puzzle a little bit better and more in a more fluid manner for the client.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, I just kind of felt like I needed to go through that list of everybody. And, and it was kind of a good thing for me to step out because it kind of made folks in the firm figure things out on their own, and kind of get a new sense, a new feel for some of the responsibilities that I have. It's kind of an opportunity for growth for the other folks in the law firm.
Yeah, I had an experience recently with a client who was sharing sort of the difference between interacting with our firm and another firm for evaluating, which law firm the client was going to hire. And I tell you what a valuable experience from my perspective to say this is really where your system gets tested, especially when you're not there to make sure that, oh, if we missed something or we did something, I can sort of figure out how to address that right away, versus a week later where that potential client may be wondering what's going on, where are we with things, I haven't heard back from, fill in the blank. And so I think that's really a valuable exercise. And also it's a tough thing to give up the control if you're if you're like us in that seat where we feel that responsibility, but trusting our teams to make the right decision and handle the situation appropriately, I think gives a lot of confidence to the teammates that we have, that hey, we have you here for a reason and we see these capabilities in you and we're appreciative of all the things that you do for our clients.
Definitely, definitely. But I took that vacation in fall break for a couple weeks, early October to mid October, and the timing of that was basically because of my daughter's fall break. It sets me up for kind of the sprint to the finish. We talk about this quite a bit. The end of the year, October, November, December, with the holidays that are in those months, things just start flying. It's a sprint to the end of the year. So it kind of goes to the point we made, I think, before I left on vacation, is time the vacation right, so that you're not missing any big deadlines. You kind of are intentional about the time that you're taking off. So now I'm revved up, ready to go. I'm ready to crush it the rest of the year. And I encourage people to do the same, crush it.
That's awesome. Well, I'm glad to hear that. Again, we had talked about sort of the preparation that goes into that, and coming back and getting caught up is definitely going to take a little bit of extra effort. But I like that what I'm hearing, that, yeah, it took some time. I was tired, but I'm back and I'm refreshed. I'm ready to go. And that's sort of the purpose of going away and spending time, and then getting that perspective of, okay, I was away, nothing went away. We still have work to do and there's clients to serve, and that's a good thing. And so building that in, figuring out that cadence and rhythm, I think is really important, and taking those lessons and applying them moving forward for both yourself and your team is really helpful.
Yeah, definitely appreciate that. As we were kind of talking about what to discuss for today, Seth, we kind of talked about law firm valuation, and kind of it sort of tracks alongside with what I was saying, the sprint to the finish. There's so many things that have to be done towards the end of the year, tax planning, all that kind of stuff needs to be done towards the end of the year. And law firm valuation might be part of that. If you're a law firm that has, um, associate attorneys that are seeking to become a partner, well, end of year reviews might be a forum in which that topic is discussed. And so law firm owners, law firm partners are thinking about, well, how do I evaluate the value of the law firm? And Seth, you came across some information about law firm valuation. I guess let me just open it up to you. Why is the valuation of your law firm important?
Thomas, I've been thinking about this a lot, and maybe it's just kind of where we are in our structure of our law office, right? Where we have a long tenured owner who at some point in the future will be retiring or stepping away from the practice or slowing down. And what does that look like? And how do we structure that? How do we honor the time and the effort and the development of the firm for many, many years? And how do you value that? It's hard to put a number on that. It's sort of a difficult concept for many businesses, but I think particularly in a law firm where it's a service based business, where you're not selling a widget over and over and you can't just ramp up production and increase revenue or market share or what have you. And so just really kind of trying to figure out a way to really get a fair number for that and a starting point, and then as I was kind of doing the research and going through, it's like, well, this is kind of an interesting exercise as you're planning for the new year and what you can utilize that valuation and those numbers that go into that evaluation, or I'm sorry, into that valuation can help you sort of set some targets for the new year. So I think from a planning perspective, it can be very helpful as well. And there are a lot of different ways to do business valuations. And if you've done any business work, you probably have come across those or read some of those reports. But like I said, from a law firm perspective, there's some different ideas there as well. And so we can get into the specifics of that at some point, probably on a future podcast, and we'll put some links in the show notes to some articles that I've been going through. But the concept I've been thinking about in terms of the lifetime legacy lawyer's value add, if you will, take a moment. Let's say put yourself in the position of someone who's maybe up for partnership at a firm, and you're trying to figure out a way to value the book of business that you have and bring that to the table. I think your annual review sort of idea is really a good one. So you're taking stock as an individual of the number of clients that you brought into the firm and potentially the revenue generated by that work. And what do you think your prospective growth is based on the efforts you've taken throughout the year to continue to develop that client base or that practice area? And bringing those items to the table, I think, can help with that discussion of, okay, I'm ready for partnership, I'm ready for ownership, I'm ready for those kind of things. And using those principles to the extent you can help you sort of get some objectivity about how to approach that conversation, taking into account that really there are a lot of corresponding expenses that go along with running a law firm, and that valuation really takes that into account to give you that true number to understand sort of what your net income or profit is at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I think one unique thing about law firm valuation is it is so revenue is so heavily dependent upon the personalities that are in the law firm. If you have an attorney that's been in practice for 40 years or longer, has developed, hundreds and hundreds, thousands and thousands of clients over the years, how do you evaluate the impact of that person leaving the firm or staying with the firm? And then for an associate attorney that's newer, that is building the book of business, that actually may be a little bit easier because you can kind of see how it's growing in some ways, track, okay, these are the number of clients that I have originated on my own. These are the number of files that I have worked on over the course of the year. And here are the numbers. Here's the revenue that I've brought in. And so that actually may be a little bit of an easier discussion, an easier decision point as far as evaluating how much an associate attorney brings to the firm.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point to keep in mind as well, because if depending on which angle you are, which side of the table you're looking at this from the owner perspective or from the associate attorney perspective, is there's information that you as an associate attorney may not have that helps you get a full picture of everything that's going on. And yet having those conversations and having done that analysis of what your perception of value add to the firm is really important, because then as you start getting additional pieces of information about how does this work and how does payroll work and how does overhead work and all of these things, that can give you a well-rounded understanding of the true value and the true cost of being an owner, and understanding that the risk and the reward that comes from that is not just the same level of pressure that you have when you're able to work and get your paycheck regardless of how you perform, right? I mean, if you don't perform, I suppose you won't have a job for very long. But the idea being you're not the one responsible for generating the clients and keeping payroll paid and making sure the light bill gets paid and those kind of things. And so that's an education process that you can go through and help start learning the true cost of running a firm, which is very helpful. And it's not just a revenue generating kind of analysis from that perspective. Now, from the owner's perspective, you also have to look at what opportunities have you provided for the attorney? Have you given them such a wide variety of types of cases, some of which may or may not be revenue generating, that you've sort of not given them a fair shot at what they're capable of doing from a revenue generation standpoint, because the value that they're adding is not necessarily monetary. It's service or taking care of a situation that they can do at a lower cost than what you could have done for the benefit of the client. So it's not a true representation there. So, the numbers are really important, but you have to also look at the whole, not just the parts, and make sure that there are some adjustments that are needed or that are made to truly help understand that value, what's being brought to the table, and what's possible in the future. And that's a big thing. So, Thomas, as you think about sort of getting ready for assessments this year and reviews with teams, what are some of the things that you're looking at to evaluate on?
That kind of goes right along with your last point. Responsibilities that have been assigned over the course of the year. Is each individual in the right practice area? Do they need to solely focus on one particular area? Can we expand from one area to maybe two or three other areas? I've got my practice set up. I handle most of the estate planning and Medicaid planning, but then the court filing work, like guardianships and state administrations, are offloaded on our associate attorney. So those, do I need to reevaluate the kind of responsibilities that have been given to that associate attorney to set him or her up for the greatest success? And the same is true for your staff as well. Are they in the right areas where we're optimizing, maximizing effort by everybody in the most efficient possible way? So you think about responsibilities, over the past year, and if there's going to be any kind of change in the following year, evaluate procedures and things like that. So that's one of the main things that I would say, evaluating responsibilities.
Yeah, and I think that's great, especially at earlier stages of practice development with an associate or with your team, to make sure that there's alignment in what they're doing and what they've discovered throughout the year about their personality and how they can best serve clients and what lights them up or they're passionate about in terms of their area of practice. And we always talk about there's the difficult part of every job, right? You're never going to have a job where it's like, boy, I love 100% of what I do all the time. Well, maybe that's out there. I don't know. There's stuff about my job I love, and there's stuff about my job that's not my favorite, like doing payroll. And so there's little things that you'll find over time that you're more geared towards than not. And I think the evaluation process is really helpful to have those discussions. And to the extent you can help facilitate a practice area for that particular personality, you're going to get the most out of that. And that natural inclination is really going to help that individual take that practice area, take ownership of it, even as an employee of the firm, and feel like they're a part of making something happen. So that's a big piece of the puzzle. And then I think continuing to just, again, kind of understanding that the data is important, understanding where you were and where you want to go, but then knowing, okay, there are certain things that if we changed, we know that's going to increase our bottom line, right? It's going to increase our profit number. And one of those that, as we were going through kind of the evaluation process, is the number of dollars that we write off on a particular bill throughout the year. And we track that over our books. And that number every year is way higher than I would want it to be from a number standpoint. But the numbers only tell part of the story. And so each of those numbers represents a case and a situation. And there's so much analysis that goes into the decision of, we build this time, we track this time, I should say, then do we bill that onto the client? And sometimes when I see that number, it just kind of makes me smile because I know my attorneys that are billing out time to their clients aren't trying to squeeze everything out of an engagement. They're looking at a situation saying, you know what, no one can afford that. So let's figure it out. And they'll write the time off. And so kind of like I say, it makes me smile because that's an opportunity we have to serve that the client's never really going to see because they don't get the bill, and we don't always show the write-offs on a particular bill. Sometimes we might, but it's really a cultural thing that we have in the office that guys have the freedom to make that determination for the benefit of their clients. And so that's a good thing. Now we want to measure that, and we want to make sure that we're not meeting our obligations, if you will, right? We got to still keep the lights on, keep people paid, and those kind of things. But that's a marker that could go either way. Because if I lower that number and that increases my bottom line, well, we've made more money. But is that the ultimate goal? And so
Right.
that's kind of the analysis I go through.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. We're truly in the relationship business more so than the money business. At least you and I are from our perspective, and so you want to keep that relationship more so than having an extra dollar or two on your bottom line. Those folks that have bills written off a little bit, discounted rates, that kind of thing. People appreciate that, and that may be a reason why they come back to a law firm. And I think that's one thing to understand as a solo and small firm owner is that you don't have to bill every single minute to the client. You can have some flexibility there and maintain a good relationship with the client.
Yeah, and I like how you said that you don't have to bill everything to the client. I would recommend that you bill everything that you do. And we talked about that
Right.
before and the reasons for it. Because when you're at work, be at work and work hard for your client. Don't waste time while you're there. But also recognize that this is that ongoing give and take, and that's what a relationship is, right? You've got to adjust to situations and circumstances and changes and things that nobody really foresaw, and be able to do that. And it's a little easier if you have like a flat fee billing arrangement than an hourly arrangement, so that you can sort of build in a little bit. But even then, your effective rate is how much time did you put into that flat fee versus how many hours or how much was the engagement, right? And so if you had a great flat fee situation, but you spent your entire year working on that one fee, your net effective rate is going to be pretty low. And so again, the numbers do tell a story. And so knowing those numbers and then setting goals around those of, hey, if your valuation number is here, let's see if we can get it to this number. And then backwards engineer, what will it take for us to do that? Well, then our revenue needs to be here and our expenses need to be here, and so on and so forth. But recognize within that there's going to be some give and take throughout the year.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, I appreciate that discussion, Seth, of end of year valuations and law firm valuations, and letting me talk a little bit about vacation. That's always fun. But, I think that probably will do it for this week's episode of the Lifetime Legacy Lawyer podcast. The best place to get in touch with us is by going to YouTube and subscribing and liking this video, subscribing to the YouTube channel. You can comment on the page there, send us your questions if you have any questions, and you can view us on anywhere that you get your podcasts. So check us out on all of the podcasting outlets. Seth, did I miss anything?
I don't think so. I do find it funny though that now that you and I have daughters that are about the same age, and I don't know if your daughter watches a lot of YouTube videos or not, but my daughter will mimic the people who close their YouTube videos and say, "Yeah, be sure to like and subscribe and hit the button, do all the things." So
Hit the button. Hit
it's
the button.
cultural. I mean, it is now permeating the culture of what to do to get the content out. Uh, that is humorous, but it is helpful, right? That's how folks find the material. Our goal is always to help lawyers launch into the practice that they really want, and hopefully the content that we put together is helpful along that journey that you're on. If you have questions, feel free to leave us a comment or shoot us an email. We'd be happy to address that in a future episode.
Absolutely.
All right, Tom,
Appreciate it, Seth. Take care.
you too.